Today we're going to look at Labyrinth, War on Terror, card by card. We hope you'll join us in exploring this amazing game. This is Legendary Tactics.
Martyrdom Operation, skillful suicide attack.
Yes.
All right. Well, this card is a gold star for me.
Yes, it is one of the, again, possible game winner.
Yep.
If you have got 2 WMDs and you hit the US with one of these in the later turn, this can be really damaging.
That's right.
Also in a regime change country, it tends to be very damaging. Yeah.
It could just cause so much havoc.
Yes.
It's great.
Yes. Now, interestingly, I have actually used this to the U.S. benefit in the past. One example is if the jihadist player only has 1 cell left on the board, and you, as the U.S., I will gladly play this event because it removes the last cell on the board, which means the U.S. wins. So
right,
it's like
right.
the last cell just says, I'm done with it. Let's just end it all. We're not,
car bomb time.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But I'll say though that the other thing that's really interesting use that I've found of this is that if the jihadist player has cells in relatively benign locations, like let's say they've piled a whole bunch of cells into a country and they just had a regime the country fell to Islamist rule, but they don't have any cells in any really kind of otherwise damaging locations. I'm happy to play it because it gets a cell off the board, and it just gets the card out of my hand and I get 3 ops out of it with it really nothing
too serious happening.
Too serious happening.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
There
that's
are
true.
times, and there are times as well when you want plots on the board. If you have the KSM card or Let's Roll, you actually want plots on the board so that you can actually use that card. So you can do a 1-2 combination of Martyrdom followed by Let's Roll, and you're laughing, especially if the 2 plots. Well, it doesn't matter where the plots are if you play KSM or Let's Roll, because you remove the plots, so who cares? And you get all the benefits of those other events. So generally, it's dangerous for the U.S., but in rare circumstances, it can actually be beneficial, surprisingly.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But any other thoughts on that?
No. We've set it up, but it's it can be a very powerful card. It can be a game winning card.
It absolutely can. Yes. And how about that situation it sets up where you have 1 WMD, and you do a martyrdom operation with a cell in the U.S., and the U.S. player has to think, well, it's 50-50.
Yes.
Or he has another, maybe he has another martyrdom operation in hand for the other cell in the U.S.
Or he has oil spike and just does it again.
Yeah, or just oil spike and then does it again. And so you can really mess with the U.S. player.
Yeah, the U.S. mind, yes.
Yeah.
Quagmire. U.S. public wearies of war.
Of war, yes. Again, U.S. hates this card, but anyway, you explain this one.
Yes, I was going to say if you can meet the conditions, this card is right up there. It's awesome.
Yeah.
You discard 2. The beauty is that the jihadi events play on the cards that are discarded.
Yes.
So don't worry, you're not missing anything.
Yeah.
If you do pull that 3-banger out of the hand.
Yes. Yeah. Now the U.S. posture goes to soft. So the only advantage to this card for the U.S. is that it can potentially set up a withdrawal scenario. So if you need to end a regime change, this card can actually kind of enable that because in order to withdraw from a regime change, you have to be soft posture, and it kind of potentially hurts you prestige wise and all that. But if your prestige is low and you are trapped in a regime change, it's kind of it could be part of your exit strategy. I wouldn't play it on purpose to let that happen unless it was the last card of my turn and so I didn't have to discard anything, in which case it just shifts the U.S. posture to soft. So if I was looking to get do a withdrawal from a regime change, then it can help. Like it shifts the posture over. And it is mitigatable in that sense, but otherwise I'm trying to get my prestige high, or I'm trying to end the regime, get rid of all the cells out of a regime change country, or whatever I can to prevent this from happening.
Now, where you could actually pair this card nicely is with Axis of Evil.
Yes.
So you could play this.
Yes.
Then
yeah.
put them right back to heart again.
Yeah. Yes, and it's a prestige roll, which could hurt even more.
Even more. That's right. So there's where, if you want to keep them stuck in the Quagmire.
Yes, you could just hammer them.
And if you are blessed to also have Oil Spike, you can do it all again next round.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Can you imagine if you had this and Oil Spike? You could play it. The U.S. randomly discards 2 cards. Then your next turn, Oil Spike, and then randomly discard.
Drop
2
it again,
turns.
2 more cards.
So literally, you could, with those 2 cards, you could have the U.S. down to like 1 or 2 cards in hand, and
yes,
you've got like
and then
still
you
have
can
6.
just completely run roughshod. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
That's.
So it could be. But the conditions are a little hard to meet.
Yes.
But
yeah.
But
yeah,
if you can.
Yeah, it's definitely you want to be out of regime change again as the U.S. Regime changes are so risky with the Abu Ghraib card and a bunch of other things, but sometimes they're necessary.
Yeah. Regional al-Qaeda.
Yeah.
Local franchise movements.
So, play if you can select 2 unmarked Muslim countries but not Iran. Place a cell in each, or 2 in each if any Islamist rule. Thoughts?
Well, you know what? If you have Islamist rule, and you can get, again, my rule is always do better than what the card's value is. So if I can get 4 cells down in some good locations where I need them to be, that's good return on my 3.
Yes. Now, as the game goes on and there's fewer and fewer Muslim countries, how do you feel about it?
This card becomes useless.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
if your only choices are like Morocco and
if they're so
Yemen,
far out of the way that it's not even worth the time, then that's the other thing too. Like, do you really want to have cells in the middle of nowhere that are going to do anything for you, or it'll be really hard to flip to Islamist rule. So
yeah, and so early game as the U.S., I'm hesitant to trigger this, but as the game goes on and there's less and less options, I'm fine with scattering the cells, like,
sure,
and having 2 in Yemen and 2 in Morocco, as I said. That's fine, because it takes a time and effort to get those cells to
where they should be.
Yeah. So it can kind of help, but it's still annoying. Obviously, you don't want to hand, especially if there's an Islamist rule. You don't want to hand those 4 cells.
Yeah, and to get the 1 cell each is not really worth it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's definitely better with the Islamist rule.
Yeah.
Saddam.
So this card can be very, very powerful. If you're behind in the game, this is a quick catch-up card here.
Yes. Yeah. And Iraq is typically poor adversary. And Saddam captured is only playable if you have U.S. troops in the country. So, it's, as I said, it's certainly in the let's roll scenario. I find that the Iraq is generally not much of a. It's not played in much. Like typically.
No, you're right.
It's usually the game-winning, as we've said in previous videos. It's usually the one that you flip to either Islamist rule or to good, and it ends the game. So you don't really. I find a lot of these cards you don't get to play. This is one that you do, but Saddam captured is kind of tough to get at. You have to really be.
Yes. No, you're right.
It happened. You have to happen to be there when the card arrives in hand. So. But yes, it's
now where this can come in really helpful is, say, you always love to hammer me with that Egypt card that I lose 4 funding on.
Yes.
I forget the name of it offhand, but
yeah,
this is a good card to play next round.
Yes. Oh yes, and undo it all. Yeah. No, it's a very solid card, and definitely
a little situational. A little situational.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if your funding's already at 8 or 9, then as a U.S. player,
even at 7, I wouldn't play it at 7 or 6.
Yes. Even 6?
5 is where I start thinking about it.
Yeah. 6, it might be worth it because you get an extra card at the following turn, right?
That's true too. Yeah.
So it might be worth it at 6, but yeah, 7. Well, yeah. Certainly not 8 or 9, but 7 is marginal because if you do take that funding loss every turn, so it's But if you have better use for the 3 ops, then you're probably better to take them.
Taliban. Islamist guerrilla resurgence.
Place a besieged regime in Afghanistan and a cell each there and in Pakistan. -1 prestige or -3 prestige if either at Islamist rule.
So if there's Islamist rule, this card is getting played for the event.
Yes. Yes, it's very
100%. 100%. Yeah. Because again, my rule of thumb is, we're getting 2 cells on the board, a besieged regime in Afghanistan, and the prestige loss. That's a lot of return on a 3. So
yes. Yep, that's pretty good. Although it's probably a little bit interchangeable. Like if you really needed those 3 ops, it's one that you could potentially. I don't know. I feel maybe you could kind of live without, but I know what you mean though. It's definitely worth the event because if Afghanistan, neither Afghanistan nor Pakistan is at Islamist rule, is it worth -1 prestige? You get a couple cells, get a besieged regime.
Yeah. No. But if it's if you get -3 prestige. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
It's almost worth it just for the -3 prestige, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Really, that's the main advantage. But yeah, it's a strong event for sure. But I don't mind if I'm not worried about the -3 prestige. I can probably live
if you're
with
already in the toilet. If you're already down at like 1 or 2,
Yeah.
2, I'm thinking about it. 1, I might not play it. So
yeah, like a besieged regime in Afghanistan, if it's already at Islamist rule, doesn't matter. So
that's right.
So if you were really, as a U.S. player, kind of as you said, in the toilet, then it would basically mean a cell in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Otherwise, no effect. So
that's right. That's right.
You could live with it, but yeah, it depends. I wouldn't love to trigger it, but there are worse events.
Sure. Yeah, I agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, the door to Itjihad was closed. So
Sunni intolerance of reform. They're so intolerant.
Play if a country tested or improved to fair or good this or last action phase and worsen its governance 1 level towards poor.
So this is a great undo card for me.
Yes, especially taking it from good to fair. Because that's a big step to get it from fair to good, so that can be annoying. For sure. Yeah.
It is a great way because I find the U.S. starts to get this momentum ball rolling.
Yes.
And so it's a good little tree to put in the way. Block it.
For sure. But as the U.S., it's very mitigatable because you just have to play
it's easy to get around. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm absolutely fine getting this in my hand as a U.S. player because it's just don't test or improve a country to fair or good and then just play it.
And then play it.
Yep.
That's right.
And Wahhabism.
Wahhabism.
Saudis export fundamentalism. They're such exporters.
They are
really exporters.
Well, they got a lot of oil.
Yeah. So add the number on Saudi Arabia's governance to funding or set to 9 if Islamist rule.
So this card is a lot like the Saddam card.
Yeah, and typically Saudi Arabia's governance tends to be poor, especially in the early games. I mean, while you're
looking at least a 3 bump. Yeah.
Yeah, typically, because most times, especially in Let's Roll or You Can Call Me Al scenarios, you're trying to get Gulf states to good and you're trying to get Pakistan to good initially. So Saudi Arabia is number 3 or 4 on the list, and so it's usually good for a funding bump of 3.
In some ways, this card is actually a little bit better than Saddam because there's no prerequisites with Saddam, or with this one.
Yes.
You're guaranteed to get at least Saudi Arabia's governance level. So
yeah. Now if Saudi Arabia is at good governance, then it really is not worth the event.
No, that's true too. Yeah.
Much better to take the ops. And in many cases, I'm happy to trigger that as the U.S. to give you 1 funding in exchange for 3 ops. That's a a fair trade as far as that goes.
Yes.
All right.
So we've hit the end of the jihadis. We're going to go over to the neutrals now.
So we've covered 4, 5, 6, 7 of those cards, if I'm counting correctly. And we usually do 10.
It's 8.
We started on Martyrdom. 7 actually. So we're going to go to Danish Cartoons. So we're going to, there's 120 cards in this game. So we're going to do 12 sets of 10. So it's easy to make it work. Danish Cartoons, doodles mocking the prophet draw extremist threats. This is such a convoluted event.
Oh
for
my
a
gosh.
one-op card. I know that they had to cover the event because it was a key part of that time period, but
the era, yes.
Man, U.S. side selects Scandinavia's posture, then jihadists place an available plot 1, or, if any Islamist rule, any available plot in a non-Islamist rule Muslim country. It's just
quite honestly, it's so convoluted. I only ever use it for the one-op.
Yeah, it's like I can't be bothered to read it through.
I just gotta stop. I start zoning out as I read it, so it's like,
Well, Scandinavia's posture may be mildly helpful. Scandinavia is typically not a country where there is
heavy, fighting over.
Well, no, it's usually empty, so it's untested. So it's only going to be a switch one way to either hard or soft, one step. And then you place a plot 1 or any available plot in a non-Islamist rule Muslim country, which could be useful actually, because if there is a spot where there is good governance, you can just get a plot in there, or a spot where there's troops and you can hurt the prestige. So it's not a terrible event. But honestly, for me, most of the time as the U.S., I'm just going to... It's not worth taking Scandinavia's posture.
No, not really.
Choosing that posture in exchange for allowing the jihadists to get a free plot down. That's not worth it.
Doesn't work out. Yeah.
So...
Fatwa.
Yes. This is kind of one of those weird cards that I'm never really sure if it's a good event or not.
For the jihadis, it can be played really well, especially if you play it like as a second last card of the turn, where the U.S. is probably holding back a good event for you.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
So you can drop this card, have them switch, and you keep just some crappy one bangers.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you're getting there. You're getting a good shot at least disrupting their hand or getting your event.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true actually. Yeah, if you now the thing is though, there's no guarantee that the US is hanging on, because if the US has 2 or 3 cards left and you play this card, then it is a bit of a random kind of guess. You're hoping that yes, they're hanging on to the bad jihadist events that they want to discard, but if their hand has been full of US events, or they got rid of their jihadist events early. So it's such a weird event.
It's a little situational, but I find it kind of a fun twist to the round. It can really mess up the U.S. players' plans.
Yes, that's true. That's true. So, yeah, it's an intriguing card for sure. And
how about you as the U.S. though? Would you? I haven't seen you drop it on me too often.
Yeah. It would be in my mind, it would be absolutely useless if you could not use the op as well. That really makes it a potentially workable card. But yeah, it depends. I mean, it depends on the cards that I'm hoping to get. But I would agree with you that I would play it closer to the end of the turn and hope you snatch a nice US event that is hiding there. Or, I mean, the other side of it too is that typically the jihadist is going to plot earlier in the turn with their best US event. So it might actually be better to use this earlier in the turn so that you have a shot at grabbing that nice event. Because probably if you wait until later in the turn, you're going to end up with like a one-banger US event or something. Like, it's not going to be that consequential. It's definitely better, I think, for the jihadi player to play, because the the U.S. typically will hang on to that one bad jihadist event for the discard.
That's right.
So
Because
you're
they
right.
just want to ditch it at the end, eh? So yes.
That's smart. That's a smart use of the card. So even though it's a neutral card, I feel this one skews a bit towards the jihadi overall. And then,
well, speaking of skewing, I think this next one is an American skewed card, so that's good timing.
So this is the last one of the set for tonight. So Gaza Withdrawal, Palestinian strip freed of occupation.
Yeah. I mean, a funding loss or a sell in Israel?
Yeah, that's true.
Like, come on. That's not even it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. Now,
for the U.S.
What's interesting about the game, and I don't know if this is... I know they have to cover events, but have you ever found a good reason to have cells in Israel?
No.
Like, it's just it's just so far out of the way, and I know there are events which trigger if you have cells there and stuff, but to me, I just don't see that much of an advantage. It just, I mean, it's okay. I mean, you do get a free cell, and if you happen to want to,
I guess you can go mucking around in the Schengen maybe, or you can go. Like, you can go on a tour of duty, I suppose.
Yeah, it's okay, but probably you can find a better use of the one-op.
Oh, yeah. So, I wouldn't use it as the jihadi, but I could see the U.S. playing it for the funding drop.
Yes, absolutely, and saving that card towards the end of the round, so you know, you don't have as much opportunities to plot. And hey, if it's removed from the deck, I don't care. Who cares? It's a one-op card.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So so that ends our next set of 10. Thank you so much for watching.
I'm Cax.
And I'm NATO. If you got some value out of this, please like and subscribe.
This is Legendary Tactics.